We're going to go into something. I've been looking at this for a while now. It kind of changed a little bit over the week. But we're going to look at something. If I had to give it a title, and I did give it a title, it's called Two Perspectives. And no, me and Jacob did not talk about this at all during this week. But what started this was months ago. I even had to, I've shared this before, I had to call Phil and ask him, I said, hey, I see this in the Bible, and I'm noticing this. And I called him, I said, am I crazy? And he said, yeah, you're crazy. I know I'm crazy, but am I crazy about this? And even he said, no, I think you're onto something. So that got me studying a lot. It led me down a lot of different rabbit holes, which is not hard to do with me. But in it, have you ever noticed this about the Bible? Everybody in it, just about, and again, I haven't studied it fully yet, but almost everybody that wrote a book of the Bible talks about their failures. Almost every one of them. They talk about what they've done wrong, how they failed God, how they fallen short. We're going to look at a couple of them today, but as I was studying it and as I got deeper into it, God just started really bringing this to life. I was like, what? There's something to it, I know. And again, a lot of different rabbit holes, but this is like the meat and potatoes of it. And it all started with Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. And it says, I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. We've all got to work. So, in all of our stories, I want us to look at just a couple things, and I'll try not to be long. We'll just see where it goes. I'm going to bring you a couple points out, but point number one, people in the Bible wrote about their failures because God uses honesty and not perfection. How often is that in my life? Proverbs 28:13 says, whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. Yes. There's a song that we sing here. Abby sings it. She does a great job. It talks about there being no waste at the altar. And there's a line in it. The first time me and Jim actually talked about it. The first time I heard that song, when I heard this line, it says, don't make it perfect, just let it be honest. Right. Perfection will lead you down a road you don't want to go down. So many times in my life, me and my wife talk often, how far along would we be if we were just honest with ourselves, or we had people that were honest with us, instead of being, but just to put it blunt, a good little churchgoer, because that's what I'm supposed to be. Instead of just being real and honest with people, hey, I'm struggling with this, I need your help. Or have people come to me and said, hey, I struggle with that too, here's what you can do. There's an old saying that's 100% true, I never will forget it. And it goes like this: I don't go to church and I don't need Jesus because I think I got it together. I go to church and admit I need Jesus because I'm weak and I need a Savior. That's being honest. That's not being perfect. That's being perfectly honest with you. I guess you can put it that way. The world needs to see the real you, the honest you. The you that says, I'm a mess, I can't do anything by myself, because if it's left up to me, I'll make a mess of it. How many can testify to that one? I've proven that time and time again, but God is the one that has it all together. He's the one that I put my faith in, because he's never left me. Even when I mess up, he's right there saying, I love you. I want to look at again, these are just three people I want to look at. I've got a notepad full of people who did this, but just three people in the Bible that wrote about their failures. First one was Moses. And what did Moses do? Moses told on himself. In Exodus chapter 2, Moses wrote about killing an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew and then hiding the body in the sand. Y'all remember that story? Come across and just flat out killed him. Y'all ever done that? Hey, God can use you. How about that? Moses had doubt. In Exodus 3 and 4, Moses tells God he's not a good speaker and asks to send somebody else. This one hit home with me. I used to not be the eloquent speaker that I am now. I used to have a bad stuttering problem when I was growing up. Y'all didn't know that. Still tries to come out every now and then. And believe you me, the fact is not lost on me that I sound like straight up cornbread. I know that. Look like I got picked right out of an episode of Hee Haw. I got to go to sharing too much for y'all. I got to go to Italy right out of high school, and my group met up with a group from Indiana. There was a real language barrier there between me and them. But I also met a group from Texas, and there was an immigrant from Mexico there. And she learned how to speak English. What helped her learn to speak English was reading people's lips. But she couldn't understand me because she said my lips don't touch when I talk. Anyway, so that one really hit home with me. Moses telling me, God, I can't speak. I got a stuttering problem. I got a southern drawl. People can't understand me. That one really hit home with me because he had doubt. How many other people have doubt in this room when it comes to God calling you to do something? Every one of us. He also had disobedience and anger. Moses did. Uh-oh. What did he do when God told him to rock, give me water? He hid it. And what was the consequences of that? He couldn't go into the promised land after that. Anybody else ever been angry with God? Yeah. Going back a little bit, make it honest, not perfect. You ever tried to hide your anger from God? Where's that got you? If Moses were writing his resume, you think he would include he disobeyed God publicly, that he lost his temper and struggled with insecurity? You think he'd put that in the resume if he was getting a job? If you do, I'm sorry, he wouldn't. But Moses didn't write about that because God uses perfection. He wrote about it because God uses people who are honest with God and honest with themselves. Who's the first one you got to convince? If there's a problem, I got to admit it to myself and be honest with myself. Next one, David. We all know David. Psalms 51, verses 1 and 2 says, have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. You can hear David's anguish if you read that psalm. You can just hear it, how I messed up, but God, I am so sorry. Help me, God. David writing about his own lowest moment, and this is after the Bathsheba incident. If you don't know, David went up on the rooftop, saw Bathsheba for the first time. He said, oh, got to go. I can't be up here. Then he went back a second time, third time, fourth, however many times he went back, ended up having an affair with her, and then tried to kill her husband to cover it up. Anybody ever done that? Hey, God can use you. How about that? But David didn't try to cover it up. He exposed his own brokenness so God's mercy could be seen later on down the road. Promise you I'm getting somewhere with this. Y'all just hang with me. David is showing us here in Psalms 51, there is no sin that is beyond God's forgiveness when your heart is truly repentant. Not just saying, God, I'm sorry. It's about doing that about face. That's when there's no sin that's over God's forgiveness, when your heart is truly repentant. Rather than hiding in sin, David allowed God to use his brokenness as a teaching moment. Concealed sin grows, but confessed sin heals. I thought that was good, and I thought I came up with it. Turns out I didn't. I was like, oh, well, whatever, it's still good. Concealed sin grows, but confessed sin heals. How true is that? That's why we got brother-to-brother group starting tonight. That's why we got sis groups starting and couples. Not that I can go into and just tell them my whole business, oh, I've done this, but when you get that mentor in that group and that group of friends you got that you can share everything with and they can help hold you accountable, what does Pastor Phil say all the time? When you bring something to light, the darkness loses its power. When you bring something out, it no longer has power over you because you got brothers and sisters that can help hold you accountable so you don't fall back into that trap anymore. And probably my favorite, what about old Peter? What about Peter? Mark chapter 14, verse 66 through 72. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came, and seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, you also were with the Nazarene Jesus. But he denied it, saying, I neither know nor understand what you mean. And he went out into the gateway, and the rooster crowed. And the servant girl saw him and began again to say to the bystanders, this man is one of them. But again he denied it. And after a little while the bystanders again said to Peter, certainly you're one of them, for you are a Galilean. But he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And immediately the rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. And he broke down and wept. Now, if you read that, Peter didn't actually write this himself, but most scholars agree that Peter was the one that told Mark about his denial, and that's why Mark wrote it down. Peter wanted to make sure they knew, I denied him. I really messed up. Are we honest with ourselves, and can we say, I really messed up? I've denied God more than 3 times. I can a whole lot more than that. I've denied him. Can we honestly be honest with ourselves and with each other? Yes, I mess up. I've denied God a lot. This honesty became a warning against cockiness and self-confidence, because Peter said to Jesus in Mark 14:31 that he would never deny him, if you read that verse. I will never deny you. Then look what happened. Not only did he denied him 3 times. When I got to that part this week, when I was looking at that, I was like, oh, how have I fell in that boat so many times? I'll never do that. I may be doing this, but I ain't doing what Dylan's doing back there. How many times have we all been in that boat? Even if it meant Peter had to die with Jesus, he said he would never deny him. In 1 Peter 5:5, Peter says that we better clothe ourselves with humility, because it can happen to you if you're not careful and humble. Tell you what, I got a text at Forward last year because I was battling things and studying things, and I got a text, and it just speaking about humility, and everything just kind of come together. I can do everything I can for Jesus, but if I don't do it with a humble heart, I'm doing it for all the wrong reasons. I'm doing it for all the wrong reasons. Peter turned his lowest point into a testimony of God's unfailing mercy. Yes, I did it, but look what I've done so far. Look what God's done through me so far. The Bible is the only book that I've seen, I don't read a lot, but it's the only book I've seen that where the heroes actually write about their failures. Can you think of another book where a hero writes, oh, I'm scum of the earth. I don't deserve this. I failed this way. I couldn't. Now my book is like limited to where the red fern grows and all that stuff. I'm not a big reader. But you don't have to pretend that God use you, because God does his best work with honest people, not perfect ones. Right. Point number 2. Others wrote about their successes because God sees what we can't see in ourselves. Ephesians 2:10 says, for we are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them, our good works. Not our good works, but the good works God does in us. Go back and look at Moses now. So Moses done struck the rock, he got mad, killed somebody, can't go into the promised land for it. So Moses wrote about his shortcomings. That's something, if we're honest with ourselves, that we all do. But my own worst critic, how many can testify this? Who is my own worst critic? That ugly dude looking back at me in the mirror every day. I'm my own worst enemy. But Hebrews 3:5 says, now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant to testify to the things that were to be spoken later. Even all that, the shortcomings that Moses had, he still talked about it in Hebrews. A lot of people say Paul wrote it, but so we'll just say Paul. Paul's writing about him in Hebrews, however many years later, that Moses was faithful. Didn't say he was perfect. Didn't say he didn't mess up. He just said he was faithful. Joshua 1:7 says, only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. God called Moses his servant, even after he messed up, even after he fell short. Why? Because God uses honesty, not perfection. Psalms 103:7, he made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. So while Moses wrote about his shortcomings, the psalmist wrote about the intimate relationship Moses had with God. We've talked about it during the fast went on for 3 weeks, and that's something that was spoke I don't know how many times. Who all wants that intimate relationship with God more than we ever had before? Not perfection, just honesty. That's all it takes. Look at David again. In Psalms 51, we see David pouring his heart out to God. And like I said earlier, you can just hear the anguish and the sorrow and the pain and just God, I'm sorry, I've messed up. Forgive me. But later on in the New Testament, people are praising him because in Acts 13:22 it says, and when he had removed him, he raised up David. When he had removed him, being King Saul, he raised up David to be their king, of whom he testified and said, I have found in David, the son of Jesse, a man after my what? Own heart. Was that after he had an affair and killed her husband to cover it up? God still called him a man after his own heart? Why is that? Because God uses honesty and not perfection. 1 Samuel 17, this is what really got my whole journey of this kicked off. 1 Samuel 17 is the story of David and Goliath. If you don't know it, we'll create one down. It'd be like me versus my little niece Renly down there. And she throws a stone at my head, and then she comes up and chops my head off. Kills me. Or a pacifier, yeah. Or a pacifier. So you got a normal human being and a giant. But like I said earlier, what really got this kicked off is who wrote 1 Samuel? It wasn't David. I'll give you a hint. It starts with S. Samuel. Samuel was writing about this. David didn't write about it. What could be considered his greatest accomplishment, slaying Goliath. Somebody else wrote about that, but we got in Psalms, David pouring his heart out saying, I have really messed up. I have failed. I am sorry. Because I'm going to be honest and admit my failures. Because if I write about my successes, I just come off as cocky, do I not? That's what got this whole journey started. So why didn't David write about it in Psalms? One reason, because David wasn't about self-promotion, but promoting what God had done. Another reason is that David knew this is not my victory, but it's God's. I'm just the vessel that God chose to use. Because I was what? I was willing. It shows humility David had since he chose to write about his shortcomings instead of victories. Somebody mentioned obedience earlier, and I got kind of tickled because I knew this was in my notes. True giants fall when you are focused on obedience and not on your image. True giants fall when I'm honest with myself saying, God, this is yours, and get myself out of it because I can't do it anyway. This wasn't David's victory. It was God's confirmation is what it was. I've got my hand on you. Despite what you're going to do later, I've got my hand on you. And again, my favorite, Peter. Matthew 16:18. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Not Peter, but the gates of Jesus is building his church that the gates of hell won't prevail against it. On what Peter said just a couple verses earlier, it was the revelation that you are Jesus, you are the Son of God, you are the Christ. That's what Jesus built his church on. It wasn't Peter. Now he did use Peter in a mighty way, at the risk of getting a little bit ahead of myself. But Jesus knew, yes, you're going to deny me 3 times, but I'm still going to stand here and tell you that revelation you just had is what I'm building my church on, and you're going to be a key player in that. Because 12 people turn the world upside down. Acts 2:14 says, but Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them. Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and give ear to my words. He goes on to preach that message at Pentecost, and 3,000 people gave their heart to Jesus that day and were baptized. 3,000 people. What could we do today if we would just be honest with ourselves and get ourselves out of the way? What would happen today if we just let God have total control? We do a great job at this. I'm not saying we don't, but do we really turn loose and let God have full control every time we come in here? No, we don't, because we never leave. Peter understood something every believer needs to know. God is not honored by the strength we pretend to have, but by the weakness we willingly bring to him and say, I can't do this. Because your grace is the one that's sufficient for this, not me, not the strength. We got some pretty strong people in here, but guess what? This weight of this world will crush you. I don't mean to point you out, but you couldn't fight that battle by yourself. You can't, but God can. Peter saw failure. Jesus saw foundation. So you judge yourself by what you did. God judges you by what he destined you to be, and because God writes a version of a story you can't see from where you are. I was in a meeting all day Friday, all day. I mean, all day. Did I mention it was all day? Because it was all day. But I did get something out of it. I got a lot out of it, actually, but we did a little exercise, and it has nothing to do with this or with church or God or anything like that, but it did kind of open up my eyes. The guy was putting on a class, he was telling a story, and it was our job to kind of, I guess, write down what he was saying. So he told us a story, and we said, all right, it had 5 characters in it. He said, all right, now list these characters in order from greatest to least that you like. So I wrote mine down, had this guy. He said, all right, now describe the one you like the most. And my word I used for that was, I forgot, it was like strong or something like that. And he said, describe the one that you like the least. So sleazy, I think, was the word I used for the guy. But as we started talking about this, there was a group of 12 of us. We all started talking about it. And the guy that was telling the story really brought out the point that, why did you describe this guy as this? Because I never said this. I just said this. The whole point of it was your own past experiences and where you are right now in your life, even where you're sitting in this room, filters what you're hearing right now. What if we start right here, and by the time it gets all the way back there, I ain't no telling what's going to be relayed. That's why I'm not going to do that, because I don't want it getting back to me. Phil will be mad at me. What are you doing in church? But don't let your own past experiences filter what you see through God, because God sees what you can't see. He sees when all the filters are off, and we just say, oh, he can't use me because I messed up right here and I'm messed up here, so I really messed up telling this man what to do, so I can't lead a brother-to-brother group or a sis group, or I messed up doing this, now I can't sing on the praise team. No. Let God write your story and get your hands out of it, because he's the one that can see what you can't see. Point number 3. Got a little bit ahead of myself. Point number 3 is God is still writing your story. Psalms 139:16 says, your eyes saw my unformed substance, in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Everybody ever fall in this trap, think of people in the Bible as super saints? I do. Well, look at them. They heard God talk, and they built arks out of gopher wood, whatever gopher wood is. Paul preached along, somebody fell asleep, fell out the window, broke his neck, he revived him, kept right on preaching. Oh, they're super saints. No, they're not. We already looked at Moses. Moses had anger and insecurity. David had murder on him and brokenness. Peter had denial and fear, but if you notice, none of them ended up where they fell. Not any of them. None of them ended where they fell. What's that song y'all was singing earlier? I actually wrote down here again. We never talked. I'm glad God is a God of second chances. I actually went on to say a God of multiple chances in my case. It took more. I'm a little stubborn. If y'all didn't know that. God rewrites stories. Moses leads Israel another 40 years after being forbidden to enter the promised land. Deuteronomy 34:5-6 says, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he in that verse is God, buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. God himself buried Moses even after. I can't do this. I stutter. I can't do that. I'm angry. God himself buried Moses. How intimate of a relationship did Moses have with him for God himself to bury him in a place that's not even known? That tells me that's protected. You think we'd have found it by now if God didn't have his hand on it? David was forgiven. 2 Samuel 12:13 says, David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, the Lord also has put away your sin. You shall not die. He still suffered consequences for his actions, but God kept his covenant with David. The failure marked him, but it didn't end him. Me and Phil were talking not long ago, and I forgot the name of the song, but the very first line in it says, the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. It's in the Bible. But it doesn't say that weapon's not going to hurt. It doesn't say that weapon's not going to inflict some damage. It just says it's not going to beat you. It's going to hurt. Sorry. Let's be real. It's going to hurt sometimes. But it's just not going to beat you. Because why? Because God is with you. Peter was restored in John 21, 15 through 19. It says, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. And he said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. This he said to show what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. Just follow me. Do you love me? Yes, you know I actually love you. Reading in the Greek, Jesus is using agape there, and Peter comes back with phileo. Do you agape me? Yes, I phileo you. That's why he had to ask him 3 times. But when Peter finally got it, yes, I'll agape you, God. I will give everything, even my life for you. Then Jesus tells him what? Follow me. Jesus restored what Peter thought was gone forever. And I did send Jacob some bullet points, but I didn't send you these, so I'm sorry. They got added later. But some more examples of people writing about their failures that were later restored. Jonah, rebellion. Go to Nineveh. I don't want to go to Nineveh. Them people are crazy. If you ever study Nineveh, there's a reason why Jonah didn't want to go. That's a story for another day. But he said, go to Nineveh. No, I ain't going. Go, I ain't going. Go, I ain't going. There's a joke that about 2020, whoever's supposed to go to Nineveh, just go already when COVID come out. So Jonah had rebellion, and he ended up getting swallowed literally by a giant fish because of it. But Jonah cried out from the deep in the belly of a fish, and God heard him. And here's what I love about it. He heard him, and he didn't even replace him. He said, all right, now go. And if you read, Jonah still didn't want to go, but he went. And look what happened. Nationwide revival sparked out. Even though he still didn't want to go, he said, go. Okay, I'll go. A whole country was restored. Samson, repeated failures. Lust, compromise, wrong relationships, everything Samson was not supposed to do, he did it. Go read it. But in his final prayer, cried out to God for strength one last time, and God answered him. That one last act of obedience. Elijah had depression and fear, basically ran and hid from Jezebel after he killed all the prophets, because Jezebel actually told him, next time I see you, you're dead. So what would any self-respecting man do if somebody's threatened to kill him? I'm going to run away. But God provided him food, water, spoke to him not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but that small, gentle voice. He didn't meet him with judgment, but tenderness and mercy and grace. Then God sent him back to anoint kings, call Elisha, and to prepare the next generation. So his failure didn't remove his purpose, but it revived it. He was a little down on himself. Look, I'm doing all this work for God, now somebody wants to kill me. It's not here yet, but it very well come to the point where your faith will get you killed in this country. I'm not saying it's coming, not saying it's not, but anything's possible. Are you going to let it compromise your beliefs, or are you going to let it revive you into something big that only God can do, as long as you're a willing vessel? What about Saul? Persecution of the church. Had a mission to wipe out every Christian on the planet. Took pride in killing Christians, did he not? He took pride in it. Even before he became Paul, you can study it. He always went the extra mile. If somebody wanted a mile, he went 2. He was always that kind of guy. But he became Paul and is now the apostle of grace and the greatest missionary the world has ever seen. He didn't cancel him or judge him or anything like that, but he restored him into a powerful warrior of God. used his past as his testimony and turned his greatest sin into his greatest message. The man who tried to stop the gospel is a man that actually spread it the furthest. The chapter they wrote wasn't the chapter that God finished. And God is still writing yours. He's still writing yours. Don't get caught up in the fact that, oh, I've messed up and I've tried to write my own story and now look at the shape I'm in. God is still writing your story. He's still a God of second chances, multiple third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances, sixth chances, multiple chances. God himself will speak of what he does for you and through you long after everything else is gone. Long after everything else is gone. Y'all come on up. I'm about done. The Bible teaches some powerful truths. People write about failures. God writes about your identity, and then others are impacted by it. You write failures, God writes your identity, and then others are impacted. Your story's not over. Your failure's not even final. Only if you allow it to be. When I had to learn a very valuable lesson in that the story that I write that ends in failure, or let me take it a step further. If somebody does something to you that ends in failure, what happens to me can or cannot be my fault. I can either bring it on myself or somebody can do something else to me. It can. But my ultimate responsibility is how I handle that and what I do with that. Am I going to let it shape me? Am I going to let it mold me into the failure that I think it is? Or am I going to turn it over to God and let him mold me and say, God, I'm sorry. God, if this person does something, God, I'll lay them at your feet. It's not going to affect me anymore. I remember a season of my own life where I thought I had messed up too bad. I'm done. Wrote God off. I really did. I wrote God off. Said, I'm done. Can I be 100% honest with you? Borderline hated him. Didn't want nothing to do with him. But even in that anger and that hurt and that despair and it's just everything blowing up inside me, God still looks at me and says, Tony, I love you. I can take your anger. Give me your anger. Then going back to what I said, be honest with him, not perfect. Does he know I'm angry anyway? Yes, so why try to hide it? I'm not saying to be disrespectful to God, but tell him how you're feeling because he already knows. As y'all stand, I actually saw it again. And if you didn't hear it, I'm going to try to tell it how nowhere near as good as he told it, but Casey shared with us a couple of weeks ago about a story about an usher that was in a church service and two young kids come in and there was no seats. And then he just left. The two kids left and the usher ran after him and said, no, we'll make room for you. Come on in here. We'll find you some seats. And those two kids ended up giving their heart to God that day. And one of them was Billy Graham. And then the story, I actually come across it this week and I sent it to Casey. I said, Casey, I come across this again. I love you. Thank you for sharing this because it really impacted me. And as I was studying this and getting ready, like story just kept coming back to me. What if that usher had so many failures he had in his life that he just said, I'm just here to set people down. We ain't got no more seats. What if he let his failures define who he was in that moment and just say, I'm sorry, there's no seats. But instead he let God rewrite his story and said, no, these kids are here. They're going to hear God. They're going to get something. And then look what happened. We don't even know his name, but that's not the point. How many millions of people did that guy influence just because he refused to see the world from his very own perspective and chose for just one split second, I need to see this through God's eyes. Those kids are here for a reason, and they need Jesus. Look what happens. What is your perspective this morning? Are you going to live your life defined by your own failures? Are you going to choose, because it's a choice. It is a choice. Are you going to choose to try your best to see it through God's eyes and just say, God, here I am. Here I am. That's all He asks for. To be willing and say who I am. Our word is action, right? That's been our word through the whole fast. What do you get when you combine action and faith? You get obedience. Whatever it may be. What's your calling? I don't know. I'm not saying you have to know, but you do have to be obedient. Whatever it may be. Like I said, I don't know my calling yet. Tony, what will I do? Be obedient and come seek God for it. I don't want to be, I'm not supposed to be on a praise team or a youth pastor or anything like that. Not saying you are, but like Phil says all the time, I think some of the biggest crowns in heaven are going to be the little old ladies who never said a word to anybody but prayed their hearts out for pastors and churches and workers and all. I believe that could be your calling. Don't give up on your story yet. It's not over. God's still writing it. How do you know that? Because you're not 6 foot under yet. You're still here, so God's still writing your story. Whatever you need, here, we'll do this. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I do want you to bow your head, close your eyes. Your perspective very well may be failure. There's not a hope in this world because you don't know Jesus this morning. I invite you to come finish your story with that right now and come to know God. You may be battling something that only you and God know about. Don't fight it alone this morning. You've got a church full of people here that will help you carry that load. You may need to come down here and just say, thank you, God, for not letting my failure define me and for already restoring me. There's nothing wrong with thanking Him for that. Don't live in the past. You have to own your mistakes so they don't own you. It's not saying I'm going to waller in it and cry and moan and just, oh, woe is me, have a little pity party. Get that out of your head. Come, give it to God. Revelation chapter 2 says, remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works. I've always wondered, if God wipes everything away in my past and He remembers it no more, why can't I just forget it? Why do I have to remember it? One, I'm not God. And two, if I didn't remember what He brought me from, how would I remember not to fall back in it? And again, it's not a wallering type thing, woe is me. It's yes, I used to do this, but God. Whatever you do this morning, please come get it this morning.